Julie, yes, please do tell me about yourself and your background in general.
Okay. So for work, I started out as an actor, and then shifted. I still do some acting, but along the way, I taught yoga for 15 years, yoga and meditation. And then the last couple of years, I've been doing health coaching and nutrition, primarily with focus on obviously plant-based nutrition.
Okay, and now speaking of plant-based nutrition and so forth, what were the foods you tended to eat growing up versus what you're eating now and cooking and so forth?
Well, my background is originally, well, I'm not originally, I am still South Asian. So I grew up around a lot of South Asian food. So I remember not eating a lot of raw vegetables when I was a kid. And I did have a propensity for Indian sweets, which is super ironic now because I have a 40-day program called Bye Bye Sugar. So it's all about eliminating processed and added sugar from the diet, not including fruit. Fruit is good for you. Fruit is not bad. Fruit is good.
Yes.
And then other than that, because I have my own programs, I like to be in the kitchen a lot, experimenting with new recipes and coming up with ways that my clients can eat whole foods, plant-based, but without processed foods or processed sugars or added chemicals. So that's kind of how I eat pretty clean. And some people might think of it as actually boring, but when your taste buds get used to eating real food, with a little bit of spice, like real food tastes so delicious.
Certainly, yes.
Yeah.
Now, full disclosure, before I go further with you, I am not a vegan. I am working towards eliminating meat over a period of time from my diet. So having said that, what do you think are the reasons people tend to become vegans, and what are your specific reasons? What does being a vegan mean to you?
Well, the people can become vegan for different reasons. Like some people watch what goes on in slaughterhouses and they become vegan overnight.
Yeah.
For the animal rights reason. Others become vegan because of health. And then there's a lot with everything that's going on with the environment. That's how a lot of people are turning more and more towards, I would say they're more plant-based than vegan, because vegan means that you're pulling all animal products out of your life. So that means you don't wear leather coats, you're mindful of where your beauty products come from, if things have been tested on animals. So it's a whole other level of awareness where you're doing your utmost best not to harm animals. Mm-hmm. Now for myself, I actually shifted away from meat and dairy because because I was doing yoga, one of the precepts of yoga is nonviolence, ahimsa. And I got to thinking about, well, I don't kill the animal, but I pay someone to kill the animal on my behalf. Mm-hmm. Therefore, it's still blood on my hands. So that's originally what got me. And then what happened was I started doing research. So this was back in 2004, when there was no Instagram or Facebook. And so I actually had to go and get books, reading about how to transition my diet away from animal products and could I be healthy. Yes. So that was sort of how it started. But obviously as time has gone on, I realized that the environmental impact is huge. Eating plant-based or having a vegan lifestyle versus doing what a majority of the population does. It's obviously a more environmentally friendly lifestyle. And then when one considers the animal perspective, it's definitely a lot kinder to animals, especially with what's going on in the world right now.
Mm-hmm. Yes, which I will get to
Yeah,
near,
no.
near the end.
We won't go down that rabbit hole yet.
Yeah, not yet. We will, but now speaking of, you were just talking about, finding actual books and reading them to figure out about the nutrients. Now, how does a vegan person get the nutrients that they need in order to stay healthy?
Well, so what I always find interesting is when people say that they're transitioning to a vegan diet, everybody's suddenly concerned about their health.
Mm,
That if you look at the standard North American diet, it's full of so much crap, like processed sugar, processed meats, which processed meats are class 1 carcinogens. So they're linked to colorectal cancer. So it's not, they're not good by any stretch of the imagination. So there's always this concern of like, oh my God, how are you going to survive on a vegan diet?
uh-huh.
Actually, it's really, really easy. Like I actually had blood work done a couple of weeks ago, and the only nutrient of concern really is B12
Right.
or iron. And iron really has to do with how different people may not process it correctly. So it's just really being mindful, but it's possible to be healthy on a vegan diet as long as you're eating a variety of vegetables, like primarily vegetables, fruits, like whole grains, lentils, beans, like all that stuff is full of nutrients. And actually, every single every single food has varying degrees of amino acids, which is what most people are always concerned about protein. So it's actually super easy to get the whole protein thing covered.
Good.
And then a lot of people who eat the standard North American diet are usually lacking in vitamin C. They're like lacking in magnesium. They're lacking in, well, in North America, vitamin D, everyone pretty much lacks in because we're in the Northern Hemisphere.
Yeah.
And then the biggest nutrient of concern that meat eaters don't have is fiber. And
Yes.
Yes, yeah. Fiber is very, very important. I regularly talk to people who don't go to the bathroom like number 2 for days on end.
Oh.
And that's not healthy. Right?
No, it isn't. It really, really isn't.
So it's actually, and I mean, I say the same thing to vegans that I say to meat eaters, which is you want to be eating primarily plants, unprocessed as much as possible, organic as much as possible. I personally am not a big fan of processed meat substitutes.
Well, they're processed, right?
And they really are meant to be like a transition food. They're not meant to be something that you're having every day. It's like, I might have a veggie burger maybe a couple times a year, maybe.
Right.
Primarily, I'm sticking to vegetables, and I also do superfoods, so I do a lot of green juices and that kind of stuff as well.
Now, not switching, but moving towards animals and the animal aspect of this. What do animals mean in your life?
Well, I never really thought much about animals until I rescued a cat in 2009. She's actually in my office with me hanging out. But we also have 3 dogs. And one of the things I realized just from living with animals is they all have their own personalities.
Oh, yes.
And they're all unique. And, you know, to me, they do communicate in their own way. It's just that human beings aren't used to listening. We're terrible listeners.
Oh, yeah. In that way, yes.
Yeah. And for me, like the way that I view animals the same way as I view children. Like they're defenseless. They need compassion and love. And so I love animals, and part of what I do with my life is making sure that whatever I can do to speak up for them, to advocate for them, that I'm actually speaking on their behalf and helping them in some way, shape, or form. And primarily, it's just helping people to understand that they have a right to their life, just as each one of us has a right to our own life. They're not here to serve us. They're not our slaves.
No, they're here for themselves. I mean, just like any other being. I mean, they're on their own separate journeys, just like anything else, or anyone, or any human. And you are an animal activist. Okay, so tell me what
Yes.
this means and what you do, what this means that you do, whether it's at home or in the field, so to speak.
Well, I was a guest on a podcast over a year ago,
Hmm.
and I was challenged by an animal rights activist to actually go to a slaughterhouse. And I had never been, because I was like, well, I'm vegan. I don't support the animal industry in any way, shape, or form. I live my life, um, you know, a certain way on
Yeah.
purpose. And he just said, he's like, you should go, you should see what happens. And I had never been, at that point, I had never really been face to face with a pig,
Mhm.
right?
Okay.
Why would I in my regular life? I
Right.
live near a farm or anything.
Mhm.
And so I started going to vigils at slaughterhouses regularly for pigs and then cows. And, and I've also gone to sanctuaries. So there is a distinct difference between the animals I see on a slaughterhouse truck and the animals I see in a sanctuary.
I would think
I,
so.
they're like the animals that I see on slaughterhouse trucks, like they're defeated, their eyes are blank. Some of them, like with the cows especially, there's visibly tears. They're lately I've seen at the slaughterhouse in Toronto with the cows, like some of the cows show up and they're skin and bones. I think because they're dairy cows and they've stopped producing milk, the farmers, whoever's they're, keeping them, the farmers stop feeding them because is no longer economically viable for them. And then a lot of them are in pretty bad shape. Like they usually show up, they're covered in poop. They have a lot of scratches, like especially with the pigs, there's a lot of scratches on them. And so for me, it's making that connection and understanding that the products that I see at a grocery store, they came from a living, breathing being that wanted to live.
Yes.
Like the last slaughterhouse vigil that I went to was a couple weeks ago before everything got shut down.
Mhm.
And the last truck that I saw, like the cows were trying to break down the doors, you know. So it's hard for me to know that that's what's going on and pretend that somehow animals are less than us. And so I just try in my own way to connect the dots for people. From the nutritional side, there is nothing that animals have that we can't get from plants.
Okay.
And if anything, on the health side, because a lot of GMO corn and soy is actually fed to farmed animals, people are inadvertently eating GMO corn and soy, and that's actually really damaging to their gut health.
Yeah.
So that from the health standpoint, there are concerns. There are also most of the antibiotics that are fed in North America that are prescriptions that are given out are actually given to farmed animals to keep them just healthy enough to get them to slaughter.
Yeah.
But that also means that human beings are exposed to those antibiotics.
Yeah.
And there is such a thing as antibiotic resistance.
Yes.
And now we're seeing more and more superbugs that that don't respond to antibiotics because so much of it is in our food supply. So there is that aspect of it. And I think that a lot of people haven't spent enough time to really consider all the issues. But from the animal standpoint, there is nothing that animals have that humans need. We can get protein, vitamins, minerals, all of our nutrients, except for B12. B12 is made by bacteria, not by animals.
Okay.
And so everyone needs to supplement B12. And my position is, from a health standpoint, everyone should have a good multivitamin that they're taking every single day anyway. And if you're doing that, then you're getting B12, and therefore you don't need it from animals, right? Yeah. And it's across the board, it's obviously harmful for the animals because they end up suffering their entire lives and living in miserable conditions and dying. and it's terrible for the planet, and it's actually terrible for human health in the long run. So those are the issues, and to me it's very, very clear. And so part of what I do is help educate people in a nice way about what's going on, and get them to start to make those shifts in their lifestyle. Yeah. I mean, it takes time to make changes, right? Like I mean, for example, for me, it was easy for me to change my food, but I didn't really think about my clothing. It was easy for me to change my food and my skincare products, but I hadn't really connected the dots on the clothing. And then when I connected those dots, I like got rid of so many things in my closet, and now only buy vegan products, right? And even when I'm buying vegan products, I want to know, were the workers paid fairly? Did it damage the environment in any way? So I'm trying to source out as ethically and environmentally sound products as possible. And sometimes, you know, the better thing to do is to just buy secondhand. I don't buy secondhand leather or suede, but I do sometimes just buy secondhand, because like why pay for brand new products if you don't have to?
Yeah, absolutely.
Right? Yeah. So it's just making that big connection of understanding how the world really works, and how to minimize one's own carbon footprint, as well as like spiritual footprint, right? When one is paying for meat, there's a lot of suffering that the individual is paying for. And, you know, the animals that are in factory farming, they're under pretty stressful conditions, and that means those stress hormones are in their body. So that meat's not healthy anyway. So,
yeah. Now you've covered this pretty much, but is there anything more you wanted to say about the fact that why you think an animal's life is every bit as important as a human being's?
Well, they're sentient beings, yes. Right? Anyone who has a dog or a cat can understand that they have personalities, they have feelings, they feel pain. Like I have little dogs, and sometimes they get underfoot, and if I accidentally step on them, they'll squeal. Yep. And so I couldn't even imagine inflicting pain on an animal as my job. Like, to me, that I would have to be such a cold-hearted, desensitized person to do that. So they are sentient beings. They feel pain. They have intelligence. They have a right to their own life. So human beings, we're not the top of the food chain. That's a myth. We're in concert with nature, and everything is interconnected. And the more we can understand that and find a way to live in harmony with nature, and especially in harmony with other animals, the better this planet will be. You know, and a lot of people always ask me, well, if the animals were free, we'd have too many cows, too many pigs, blah, blah, blah. But all the animals that are in factory farming are bred into existence.
Yeah.
And they're bred solely for the purpose of killing them. So as soon as that stops, we wouldn't have an overpopulation of cows or pigs or sheep or goats or whatever it is, right? Mm-hmm. That would not happen. So, right. Yeah.
And is the old ideas of being at the top of the food chain and such, is that speciesism?
It is, but it's also, the other part of speciesism is that in North America, we love certain animals and we subjugate others, right? We love dogs and cats, but we subjugate cows, pigs, chickens, yes. Right? So that is speciesism. Okay. And it is a very outdated and incorrect idea. And if someone really sits and examines it, it's easy to see that it's built on a very dangerous deck of cards, that as soon as you start to really understand it, it doesn't make sense. I mean, it's the same way that humans like to categorize other humans.
Yes.
You know, when we had slavery, and there's slavery still present in some parts of the world, that othering, that it's incorrect,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and it's important to call it out for what it is.
Yes, and of course there's still, you know, rampant racism and like,
Sexism and
yeah,
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 but it's just this human habit of putting people or animals into certain boxes, and it's also this that whole idea, it also comes from capitalism, right? Because
mm-hmm.
you need some workers and you need some people at the top,
Yeah,
right? And it is, there are some good things to it, but there are also some pretty serious flaws to that whole system.
yeah.
So
Yeah, absolutely. Now, what messages do you have for people who do want to reduce their meat consumption and move towards a vegan or more vegan lifestyle?
I always recommend that they watch a few films first
Okay,
so that they understand,
such as?
because What the Health is one of the ones, I think it's still available on Netflix.
Okay.
What the Health and Forks Over Knives are the two films I always recommend from a health standpoint.
Mm-hmm.
The Game Changers came out a few months ago. That's also worth watching. They
Okay.
break down the science really well
Mm-hmm.
in the Game Changers. So that's the same science that I know as a nutritionist.
Okay.
And then the other two films I always recommend is Cowspiracy and Dominion, to actually understand the animal agriculture industry, because I
Right.
think a lot of things go on behind the scenes, and so the average person doesn't understand. There's more understanding now because of social media,
Yeah.
but a lot of people just go, oh, I can't watch those videos. And I think the reason that they can't watch the videos is they know on some level that it's wrong,
Mm-hmm.
right? I couldn't watch another human being being subjugated, so it's hard for me to watch the videos too, but it it um it shows me of what's going on and why it's wrong. So and then the other part of it would be from a daily habit standpoint, is to just start adding more vegetables. Have, like, if someone's used to having meat 3 times a day and dairy multiple times a day, just start to swap things out, like start to swap out dairy for some plant milks. There's some great options. Oat milk is got a huge surge, like people love oat milk.
Okay.
You can even make your own oat milk, so you don't necessarily have to go out and buy it.
Nice.
So it's just literally oats and water. It's super
That's
simple.
easy. Yeah.
Yeah, oats, water, blend, go ahead.
All right.
It's so easy. So yeah, just like looking at what you're having and starting to have meals where there's no meat, and adding more vegetables. And Forks Over Knives has a great online blog where they have tons of recipes. Oshi Glows is another one that has wonderful, beautifully simple whole foods recipes. Yeah, but like just maybe have days like every other day where you have no meat.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe have a week where you try no meat. Like I have 5-day and 7-day programs where there's no meat in the program, so you can get my videos, get the recipes, and just like try it for a week and see how you feel. Like, that's the thing, is I hear often from vegans that the only regret they have about turning vegan is that they didn't do it sooner. Yeah.
Nice.
Nobody regrets going vegan, especially if they're doing it properly.
Mm-hmm.
But a lot of people that are eating meat are dealing with a lot of chronic conditions that they don't realize can simply be fixed by changing their diet.
Right.
Yeah, like energy, weight issues,
Mm-hmm.
blood pressure,
Yeah.
even heart disease, like heart
Oh,
disease.
yeah.
Yeah,
I would think so. Yeah.
fixed by a whole foods plant-based diet. There's been no meat diet that has fixed heart disease.
No.
So yeah.
That would be weird. Now, the rabbit hole. We're dealing with COVID-19 right now. I'm not positive when I'm posting this particular video, but we may still be. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
Please give me your thoughts on how overcrowding in animal farming, wildlife markets, and anything like that may or is related to pandemics and so forth?
So 3/4 of the viruses we're dealing with are known as they're zoonotic viruses, meaning that they originate in animals and they transfer over to humans.
Mm-hmm.
So part of the overcrowding in wet markets and factory farms has to do with the fact that it's it's not clean conditions. So there's a lot of feces and urine, and the animals are not kept in dignified conditions.
Yeah.
But to add to that, because they're under so much stress, their immune systems are suppressed.
Yes.
This is the same as humans. Like this is why I've been telling people, like, don't stress out about what's going on, because it's not helping you.
No.
And I literally mean that it's on the chemical level, it's not helping because your immune system becomes compromised. Same thing with animals. So maybe if there was, the first thing is they have viruses that don't harm them but harm us. Mm-hmm. But let's take COVID-19. It started in bats and then started jumping different species.
Right.
As it did that, it started mutating. So what happens is that because their immune systems are suppressed, they get the virus, it stays, it hangs out, it mutates, and then it starts jumping. And you just don't know. Like, the virus we're dealing with right now isn't the virus that started originally in the bat.
Yeah.
And apparently there are multiple strains going on. So what's happening in Europe is not the same as what's happening in North America. So, and a lot of things that we have, like measles and smallpox and flu and the common cold, what else? SARS. H1N1, MERS,
yes.
Ebola, like all those started with animals, all of them.
Yep.
And so, I think this is an opportunity to really look at what's going on in the food system, because if we go back to just, factory farming as usual, there will be another outbreak of something. Yeah. Who knows what, and who knows how long. The other thing is that if I think back to the last 15 years or so, we've started having more of these outbreaks, and it's not a good situation, because the next one may take out millions of people.
Yeah.
It could be like this one is actually more dangerous than SARS was. Ebola, which hasn't really taken root, thankfully, is a super scary one.
Yes,
so we just don't know, right?
Yeah.
So we're messing with the foods. We're messing with nature by two ways: of either encroaching on natural habitats of animals by cutting down forests to open up the land for cattle grazing, for beef production. So that's one of the ways that we've met some of these viruses. And then the other way is through the factory farming system. And both the World Health Organization and the UN has come out and set against factory farming, right? And said that it has to stop because of what's going on with the viruses.
Yeah.
So, I don't know when it's gonna stop. I think, like, on the individual level, the best thing you can do is boost your immune system, and the way to do that is to sleep and to make sure that your nutrition is on point. So that actually means getting things like red meat, eggs out of your diet, farmed fish. All those things are not great for gut health. So gut health and immune system health is intimately tied. And a lot of people, and I was actually listening to a podcast by an infectious disease expert, and he said the reason there's this virus is of so much concern is so many people have weakened immune systems. And they have weakened immune systems because they don't take care of themselves. So of course they're more susceptible to a virus than if they were strong. Like, if your body's healthy and strong, it's able to fight things off.
Yeah.
because our immune system's doing that all day long anyway. Like that's its job.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. All right, Julie, thank you so much for all of this information. And yeah, I'll want to put links to various things that you've cited at the bottom for people to read and click through to, and all of your information too. So people who would like to join your programs and so forth and take up your challenges and whatnot, nutritionally, etc., can do so. Again, thank you so much.
Cool. Thanks. Thanks for having me.